Watson's Real Estate and Property Management, they do a lot of these investment seminars. What's the benefits of doing these?
Well, Dave, we do these investment seminars about 3 or 4 times a year just to help our clients move forwards financially, to try and get themselves into a better situation with their rental properties.
Yeah. And what's tonight? What will you be talking about tonight? What speakers have you got on this evening?
Yeah, well, tonight we've teamed up with Ken Watson, who's had many years' experience in sales. We've got Craig Seaton from Mortgage Link and Bob Weaver, who's an experienced property manager. So we're helping people to move from a situation where they've maybe got one property and stopped, just to educate them on how to move forwards, so that later on in life they'll have a better experience with regards income.
So it's a lot of it is about educating your current clients and predominantly prospective clients as well?
Yeah, well, we like to add value, so we definitely love adding value to our current clients, so they're always invited to our seminars. But we love seeing new people too, because we're passionate about investing and helping people earn more money.
Oh, well, good stuff. I'll look forward to it.
Great.
It's 33 and a half years I can impart to you tonight and give you my feelings as to what the market's doing and what it's likely to do. Because I've been 33 years in the industry, my eyesight's a bit right. Put those on to start with. Just going back to what Greg mentioned earlier in his slide, this particular article was in the Manawatu Standard yesterday morning. Did anyone see it? Put your hand up if anyone saw it. Yeah, it's a very small number, but I thought I'd do just before I get underway with talking about the residential market. One thing, I'll just mention something just before I read this out. In our investment seminars, as Greg mentioned earlier, we've actually been doing investment seminars now for about 16 years. We started way back then and did a number of investment seminars over about 5 or 6 years, and then we had quite a break, and then we started again about 2 or 3 years ago. So, and one of the things we haven't done is we generally haven't brought the residential side of our business into these seminars. And we've just concentrated on property management and buying investment property, etc. So this will be a first tonight to talk to you from purely the residential side and what's happening in the residential side of the market in Palmerston North. But I just thought I'd read a proportion of this article, which I think just highlights again some of the interesting things about being a landlord, and the numbers that Greg puts up there of the number of people that have just got one property and one property only are quite astounding. They really are, and probably would just make it more relevant to what I'll just read out to you. Unprofessional behaviour can also cause cases taken by landlords to the tribunal, they're talking about a tenancy tribunal here, to backfire spectacularly. In one case, a landlord asked the tribunal to award him more than $2,000 in rent he believed was owed to him by a tenant who left 3 months before the end of a fixed-term tenancy. But the tenant told the tribunal he'd left because of the behaviour of the landlord, who was constantly visiting and entering the property without consent. He feared the landlord, who visited the property because of rent arrears by another tenant, might even enter the property while he was asleep. The tribunal accepted the landlord had breached the tenant's right to a reasonable peace and privacy, and that his behaviour amounted to harassment. The tenant had left the place in a mess and agreed he should share the cost of rubbish removal with the other 4 ex-tenants, but the tenant claimed the place was in a mess when he arrived, and the tribunal wouldn't grant the landlord's application for cleaning costs. The landlord claimed the tenant did not return his key and that a barbecue was missing, but provided no evidence, so the tribunal dismissed his claims. The barbecue was not specified in the list of chattels in the tenancy agreement, the tribunal noted. The landlord knew so little of his tenant that he didn't even know his age. It turned out that the tenant had been a minor of just 17 when he signed the tenancy agreement. The tribunal found the landlord had breached 3 sections of the Residential Tenancies Act and ordered him to pay exemplary damages to the tenant here. And it just highlights to me, and I mean, I'm on the residential side of our business. Greg and a number of our other members, of course, are looking after our rental side. And it just highlights to me again the difficulties with doing your own property management. It's got to a point, actually 16 years ago, I used to stand up and I'd say to people, look, if you're going to do your own property management, that's fine. Just be careful, but do it yourself because it's quite, you know, quite an interesting profession. I stand up here today in 2017 and very, very loudly say to all of you, don't do your own property management. It honestly is not worth it. I personally, as the principal of Watson Real Estate, have had people come into me over the years, taken them into an interview room, and they were crying. Honestly crying. It's quite amazing how quickly debt, somebody not paying rent, suddenly it's not $200 or $500, but it can be $3,000 or $4,000. And if they've not done things exactly right, all sorts of difficulties. So these days, whether you do it yourself, it's just a scary area to be in. Okay, let's have a look where we are now. We've always followed a mantra. We've been doing this for the 16 years we've been doing property management seminars, of saying to people in the Manawatu area, whether it be Palmerston North or Fielding, that a very good idea if you're just getting started out is to look at a 10-year term of ownership. I'm going to show you some stats in a minute which will indicate that if you do buy investment property and look at a 10-year ownership model, then it works out extremely well. And if you're looking at it from a superannuation point of view, it's really, really interesting. So where are we, Greg? We're just going to start up here. Okay, so I said, yes, some interesting stats here, and this is obviously within my selling days. So the reason I've highlighted March is because they're the latest statistics that we have available to us with March 2017. But the first thing I'm putting up there is, which may surprise some of you, that if you were buying a house in Palmerston North in 1997 in March, the average price was about $127,000. It's not that long ago. We're only talking 20 years ago. So if you bought 3 houses at about that price 20 years ago, and then we'll see how it marches on. So here we are in March 2007, and we see the medium selling price of 270. Now has that doubled in 10 years? Or more than doubled in 10 years? Right now, the very latest statistics that we have available shows us that in March 2017, the average price of a home in Palmerston North, or the median selling price of a home, is $320,000. Now, the first thing that when you look at those graphs is, why did it move so dramatically in the first 10 years, but far more slowly in the second 10 years? There's still been quite a lift, but it's there is a real difference. And if we go to the next slide, Greg. Okay, March 2008, we were in what is commonly known as the global financial crisis, when everything started to crunch right around the world, not just in New Zealand or Palmerston North. And we just followed through, and we'll just show you what happened. There was a drop in median prices over this particular period. See, all the way through, it's just starting to pick up again. It's starting to move again, dropped a little bit again. Now, March 2015 was about when the market started to go again in Palmerston North. But we had a period between 2008 and we've got 7 years there where the market was very, very stable here. There's hardly any movement at all. There was a bit of up and down. But we now go to 2016, we've dropped a little bit, but the very latest statistics will indicate to you that right now that's why we get to $320,000. Now the second 10 years, the reason why it's been a lot slower, there's still been a good lift, but the second 10 years has indicated we went through some unusual situations, didn't we? The global financial crisis, the loan to value ratios that the banks put on investor buyers slowed that part of the market down, and it's you know, just changed dramatically over that period. 1987 we had a massive share market crash that stopped everything. It was about then, 1988. If you bought a house in 1988 and went to the bank, you were paying, believe it or not, around about 24% interest. Think about that today, if you were buying a house today. The interesting thing back then, and I was selling houses back then in 1987, 88, people were buying them. Didn't stop. People still bought houses. People that needed somewhere to live, but very interesting times, that's for sure. Today's market, you can almost say, is the absolutely direct opposite to that. We are finding, have any of you recently been around any open homes? Well, all right, that's interesting. Very few of you. If you do go through, then I'll give you one that we did at the weekend on a fairly normal residential home in the Vogel Street area. You know, the Roslyn Street area of the of the city. 270 to 300,000. We told people this property would sell for. 36 people at the first open home. We reckon around about 90 people actually went through, because there were 36 groups of people. Yesterday we presented to the owners 13 offers on that house. Interested in this? Now that investor buyers are quite interesting people, because investor buyers, we have investor buyers come into our office and they are looking to pay $500,000 for an investment property. Now, as Greg will tell you, and he handles it a lot more often than me, people are paying $700 a week rent in the city. One of the reasons they do that, they come from the likes of Auckland, where they're getting $900 a week, and they're seconded to Massey for a couple of years. You're going to get the same standard of house in Palmerston North for a lot less than what they're getting for the property in Auckland. Quite happy to do so. So all price ranges at the moment in town, whether it's a house at $250,000 or over $1 million, every price range is moving now. The whole lot of them, and that's unusual. In my career, bottom end might move and the top end stops. Top end might be moving quickly and the bottom end stops. At the moment, we're finding that all price ranges are moving. So we're working on a very, very buoyant market. Now that's good if you own investment property at the moment, because if we're here next year, that might show it as $380,000 that houses are the median selling price. This year I can't see it stopping very much. Low interest rates are going to stay for a while. There's plenty of first home buyers coming through KiwiSaver, so I'd be most surprised if we see much change apart from what's happening at the moment. The last thing I'm just going to mention, and I know it'll be touched by Craig when he gets up in a few minutes from Mortgage Link, I'm going to offer you a gift tonight. So there's my 33 years, and I'll bring all my other property consultants into this, and it is a gift, and a lot of people recognise or think that there's some sort of ploy here by real estate agents. One of the reasons Watson Real Estate has integrity in their name, I don't mind mentioning it to everybody here, is that we do things with integrity. Not always the case when you read the newspaper of what some real estate people do in New Zealand, but not the way we operate. We're a local family business and we look after the local community. The gift I'm going to offer you tonight is that the equity you have in your present home, if you own your own home, is extremely important when looking at the investment market. We are happy to give you a free appraisal or market valuation of your home at any time. I'm doing that every day. Our property consultants are doing that every day, and every day we are surprising people. I'll go along and I'll say, no, your house is now worth X. Oh, it can't be. I say, yes, it is. There's been, probably in the last 6 months, there's been a jump of anything up to $50,000 more that a house is selling for now compared to 6 months ago. So you can imagine a year ago, if your last time you had anyone look at your own home for value purposes and it was more than 18 months ago, I can tell you that the value will have risen quite dramatically. So the gift I'm going to offer any of you tonight is, if you want to come back to us and get a free updated valuation of your home, especially if you wanted it for equity purposes for buying investment. These 1997, it cost $104,000 to buy a house, and it was taking 56 days. See the rise in 10 years in the fielding market? And we'll just go through to the next one, Greg. And even now, I think that Michael Ford I see sitting in the audience. Was that a record, this last one, I would think, Michael, is it?
Certainly is, Ken.
Right, okay, so so fielding has become a really dramatically interesting part of the real estate scene. And I think anybody looking at investment property should not just think of the city of Palmerston North, but should look at fielding too. Thank you for your time.
He has a personal interest in residential rental investment and has an excellent level of knowledge in this field. So he can advise on things like issues regarding loan structuring, which is very important, and ownership entities. I won't steal Craig's thunder, but please welcome Craig Seaton from Mortgage.
Wow, what an introduction.
So you might have to take a couple of slides here, sorry.
Oh, we've got that photo. So, yeah, welcome everyone. So feel free to ask questions, but I think we'll have plenty of time for that. So, firstly, I'll just go through a little bit about what Mortgage Link's about. We won't spend too much time on that, and then we'll just get into some information about lending criteria. There's been a lot of changes over the last 6 months in lending criteria relating to rental properties. So the world has changed a lot in that. Run a quick example on using your equity to buy a rental property. So everyone's circumstances is quite different, but we'll just run some basic ideas on that. So our company's been around since 1987, and is one of the first mortgage advisor companies in New Zealand. We have 4 advisors based in Palmerston North. All of us have had considerable experience. One of the advisors has had about 30 years experience. I've had 20 with a bank prior to that, 10 years, and our other advisors have had 20 plus years of experience as well. So we're members of the Professional Advisors Association. We've won a few awards over the years. We're all involved with property investing, so we are familiar. We are able to share those stories and our experience with our clients. One thing we do pride ourselves in is we provide ongoing advice, so it's not just about arranging a loan, it's about helping you through making good decisions about your mortgage throughout the life of the loan, making sure your interest rates are the best possible, the loan structures are set up the correct way, and making any changes over the course of your loan. Alright, so October last year, the Reserve Bank in its wisdom introduced an LVR restriction across rental investment loans and any home loan. Prior to that 1st of October change, the Auckland market was the market that was scaled back to a maximum deposit of minimum deposit of 30%, maximum loan of 70%. So anything in the Auckland sort of coastal area, you had to have a 30% deposit for. And the rest of the country was left alone with requiring no more than 20% deposit. Obviously the housing market has been running red hot, not just in Auckland. It's spilled over to most provincial areas. So the Reserve Bank decided prior to the 1st of October to introduce these restrictions. These restrictions have thrown a bit of a cat among the pigeons a little bit, because we have been used to being able to borrow easily up to 80% of rental investment properties, and over my years we've seen the ability to borrow with a 5% deposit, 10% deposit, and now that's completely changed. The rationale behind it is to obviously curb the housing crisis or booming that we're having at the moment. We obviously blame our big brothers in Auckland and Wellington and Christchurch for causing this housing bubble. but we are tarred with the same brush. We all have the same rules to apply. So, so it definitely has had an effect on the market. I think we're all vouch that investor loans and clients are fewer and far between. First home buyers are probably the ones out there in more numbers than rental investor clients. So the fact that you need to have 20% equity or the ability to borrow up to 40% of your existing home does change the dynamics quite a lot. However, there are some options to borrow up to 80%. So any new build house is exempt from having a 40% deposit requirement. So if you want to build yourself a rental investment property or buy something brand new that's within 6 months of its code of compliance and has not been lived in prior, is exempt from the requirements to have a 40% deposit. So there is possibilities to not need such a big deposit, and that could be other lenders as well. So there are some non-bank lenders that are not caught up on in the Reserve Bank rules. So they would be like credit unions or some finance companies, and they will go up to 80%. They are a little bit limited on what they can do, so they won't do a rental investor who's got 10 rental properties. They're more in a sort of a 1 to 3 rental property purchase scenario, sort of mum and dad investors who want to enter the market and buy maybe 1 to 2 to 3 sort of properties. So there is a niche there. The interest rates on those loans are probably at least 1% higher than you'd expect to pay perhaps at a mainstream bank. But they have got some people into a rental property that wouldn't otherwise have done that. So I think one thing with rental lending is it's pretty common across pretty much all the banks and lenders is they will use 75% of rental income. They take 25% off for non-occupancy rates, insurances. So it's a pretty simple calculation. So if you needed to service your debt to qualify for a loan, your rental income is obviously important and is used as a calculation to afford your loan. Slide before. So your existing home, the bank or lender you're with will scale your lending on that up to 80%. So in this quick example, if someone had a $400,000 home and a $200,000 mortgage on it, there's still $120,000 worth of equity they could leverage to borrow without actually having to physically put any cash in. So if you do the numbers on that, a 40% deposit using $120,000 as your deposit could buy your rental property up to $300,000. So it's a pretty simplistic example, but what we have noticed is although these deposit requirements are hurting, that the growth in value of people's properties are really helping perhaps bridge some of that gap. So a lot of people are very surprised on what their homes are truly worth. They look at the rateable value and are a little bit too blinded by that, and we all know they're a pretty low benchmark on value. So it's worth considering getting a valuation, appraisal then evaluation maybe. Banks unfortunately prefer the valuation method than appraisals, but it's a good start. They will do electronic valuation sometimes to see whether that'll fit on that. It's a sort of a way to avoid having to pay a full valuation. Where it can sometimes be a little bit difficult is if someone already has rental properties and they may have borrowed up to 80% to get those properties. So if they've got 2 or 3 rental properties in their home, the numbers at 60% versus what they were used to borrowing 80% can throw a huge spanner in the works. And they can really mean that they're perhaps well and truly over that 60% margin at the moment, and it can hold you back. There's no doubt about it. But again, checking the values on those properties may mean it's not quite as bad as it looks when you first look at it. Alright, so let's assume that you got through all those deposit requirements and you managed to buy a property and you're thinking about how do you structure your lending. So it's quite common to have an interest-only loan for rental investment purchase, and particularly if you've got other loans that you're paying off first. So if you've got a home mortgage and that mortgage is not tax deductible, it's quite normal to try and request an interest-only loan so that you can concentrate on paying your home mortgage back faster. So clearly, roughly half of all investment loans are interest-only, so people are very keen for that. So the banks are actually being told by the Reserve Bank to stop doing so much interest-only lending and to only offer it to those that really should have it or need it. And home lending that's not related to something like rental property purchases is probably unlikely to get an interest-only facility, apart from those revolving credit loans which they love giving out. So it's important to repay your bad debt first, and that's your debt that's not tax deductible, so that's your private hire purchases, credit cards, home loans. That's the first priority, and your good debt is your debt that you've used to buy a rental property, buy a business. That's the debt that generally you consider paying off last. So you want to maximise your tax deductibility, and that's where interest only helps. Tax time you're probably a little bit better off. When you do buy an investment property, you do need to think about what entity you own your rental property in. So there's a few options. Those options have been reduced over the years. There's a term now, a LTC company. That company is quite a common scenario where people set up a company to own that rental property. Not quite as conducive as it used to be years ago, where you could offset a lot more losses and you could transfer it to different shareholders a bit more, but it's quite a common thing to think about your ownership entity at the beginning. Think about who's the higher tax earner or taxpayer within your relationship if you're a couple. Should it be family trust owned? Yes, there's some implications on that when it comes to tax losses, but it might be a long-term goal that you want more protection of your asset rather than thinking about the short-term benefits of tax losses. It's better to try and think about that at early stages rather than to introduce that at a later date and have costs of changing your lending and your ownership entities around. That costs money, and always love all that sort of rejigging of property ownership and what have you. All right, so that's roughly me. So we have got some time for some questions. We've got plenty of time, I think. So has anyone got any particular examples or questions or?
Yeah, with the new build, how does it work in terms of the servicing of that if the property hasn't been built, but there's a rental guarantee, that it's going to be rented long term, for that period of time for the building? So you have to.
So you have to service that yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's a traditional build where you are drawing down your loan to pay progress payments, there's quite a lot of builds these days that are sort of payment on completion, which turnkey, which is obviously quite easy. Okay. So you do have to pick up the interest bill as it's being drawn down.
Okay.
It's not quite as bad as you think because it's only proportionate to what you've taken. So you probably do need to put that in the budget. There are some smart loans where you can capitalise your interest, but it's at the end of the day, it's a bigger loan that you end up with at the end of the day. So I think you should be able to try and work those in your numbers to be able to at least pick up the interest bill. Interest bill, usually doesn't work out as bad because if you get the bill done within sort of 16 weeks and it's only a gradual drawdown.
You don't think that market is overinflated, do you, or what's your feelings around that?
Well, Auckland market feels overinflated. I just spoke to someone today trying to buy in Tauranga and their rateable value was 441 and he was thinking he was going to pay 700,000-800,000 for the property. So we all know rateable values are terrible, but that feels terrible. But I think it's just the sign of the times, and I think the migration numbers stay high, and the politicians don't tinker with that. And you've got to think that the prices are going to hold up. Auckland's 3 times the value of our market. You've got if you're investing locally, I don't feel concerned at all about our local market.
Agree.
Replacement value, buying the land, trying to build the house that you just bought that was for 320,000. You can't replace it if you had to rebuild. Auckland, buy a $1.5 million property, it's a shack on a piece of dirt. Of course you can replace that, easily or under 1.5.
However, it is pretty hard to get into a situation where yours is the only offer, but that is something to consider. I will mention though that even if you are competing against other people, so it's a property that's for sale through a real estate company, just bear in mind that things are going to move upwards, and that even if you feel you're paying a little bit more, I honestly believe that things will take care of themselves particularly well over the next relatively short period, 12 to 18 months. So that's kicking a little bit more, probably over that period of time, it really didn't matter quite as much. Investors will always tell you buy as low as possible. Of course, it's absolutely correct. And if you own an investment property for a long term, you sell it when the market's as high as possible. That goes without say. You can, a lot of the work can be done for you by doing that. But I just wanted to say that even though we're in a market that's moving upwards and that you may be competing, don't think from the one or two of the extreme examples that we find that that's in every case, because it's not. Works in the greater Manawatu. And in case you're wondering what a business development manager actually is in the context of property management, it's somebody who goes out and gives advice and helps people. It's really as simple as that. So Bob and I both go out and just give advice on properties that maybe people are looking at buying or looking at renovating or on rental amounts. But I won't steal Bob's thunder. But so he's a business development manager, I should say, based in Fielding. He's an associate of the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, which means he has a high level of legal studies, as do a number of our staff. So he's in a very good position to give advice. And I'll just hand over now to Bob. Welcome, Bob Weaver.
So, as you know, my name's Bob. As Greg has said, I've actually got two hats with Watsons. I am a property manager, so I run my own portfolio of properties around the Fielding area and even into the Rangitikei. But I work alongside Greg, business development. And yes, our job is to give advice, and that's very important. And our job also is to obtain property managements, and I suppose to encourage you in a nice possible way to use our services, because that's what we're all about at the end of the day. Okay, so we will get on. First of all, no, gone backwards. There you go. Powerful benefits of a property manager. So first of all, I just want to talk very, very briefly about what a property manager does. Now, I've done a presentation previously where I've gone through it all in detail. I'm not going to do that tonight because there's a few other things that I want to get to. But remember that your rental property and even the property you own, they're your most valuable assets. And our job as property managers is to protect your most valuable assets. So you're putting them in our hands to look after on your behalf, which is quite a responsibility, and it's not one that we take lightly. While we're doing that, we're also looking after the property, so we're helping maintain the property. It doesn't mean I go out and stick a few nails in or whatever, but it means that we're keeping an eye out and we know what we're looking for with regard to making sure that if there's any problems at your property, we can tell you and keep you informed and make sure that while you're actually getting your income, that the value of your asset isn't going down because you're not keeping up with the maintenance. A big one, relieving the owner of the stress of management. Now I know some of you here, actually we manage your properties for you. I'm sure there are some of you here who use other management companies. There's some of you who do it yourself. And there's some of you perhaps thinking about getting into the market. And that's all good. And it's a decision that you'll make at the end of the day. Of course we're biased because that's what we do. But there are good reasons why management companies exist. And there's good reasons now, and with the regulations changing more than ever, it's really, really important that you realise that what you hear is working on behalf of you as investors, not the tenants. Okay, so we have to make sure. Now I take over managements from a lot of people who have been doing it themselves, and 3-4 years they haven't done a rent increase. They'll come and tell me, oh, they're nice tenants though. Yeah, they're lovely tenants. I mean, they would be. You haven't put the rent up for about 3 years. It is really, really important, and the guys there will tell you that you keep it maximised. It's your income, okay? It's your investment. It's not a plaything. It is for you to actually earn money. The other thing that's really important is to keep you on track with the Residential Tenancy Act, and the Residential Tenancies is really important. You can get derailed there quite easily. You can get big fines for things that you don't realise you can get fines for. So our job as property managers is to make sure you don't fall foul, because we do everything in line with that Act. we know it backwards and we make sure that you're covered, and that is really interest, etc. Or you can get an investment property. Now, you've been told how well the investment properties are going at the moment. Remember, as the prices rise, so the rents are rising as well. So don't get worried about, oh, the prices are going up, you know, that's going to reduce my rate of return. But comparably, the rents are going up as well, and they have to. Otherwise, you know, it would be a bad time for property investors. Okay. So the investment property, it's your tangible asset. Okay, it is tangible. It's, you know, you can see it, you can touch it, you can do everything with it. You know it's there all the time, and it's your big asset. So you need to make it work for you while you've got it. And you've heard that about 10 years is a good time to keep it because it actually repays most of what you've borrowed. It's important you get an excellent rate of return. Now, I don't know if you're good at working out your own rates of return here. It is really, really important before you do anything, you work out how much it's going to cost you and how much you're going to make out of it. Now, if you don't know how to work out rates of return, we have got property consultants in this room, or you can ring us up, and property managers who are experienced in working out rates of return for you, and they will happily do that.
There's also, Bob, a calculator on the...
There's a calculator in the thing. So it's really important to make sure that you get your rates of return right as well. You know, remember to do it over 50 weeks, because you might have 2 blank weeks. So when you're working out how much income you get, make sure that you do add money in for maintenance. Don't ignore maintenance. It's really, really, really important, because you've got to keep your property maintained. And there were 1 or 2 owners who think, I get all this money and I put it in the bank, I don't want to spend it. You have to be aware of. I'm sure we all know about smoke alarms. I'm sure any of you that have got rental properties, I'm sure you've got smoke alarms in the right places, within 3 metres of any bedroom, etc., etc. You know, I hope there's nobody here that hasn't, because it's big, big fines, and we've all seen in the papers how bad it's been when there's been a fire, etc. So it's really important that that's done. So that's one thing. But the installation is coming up. So this is just a reminder about the regulations. So from 1st July 2016, you must include an installation statement in your tenancy agreement. So if you're doing it yourself and you're producing the document, you have to have something in that tenancy agreement actually stating where your installation is. Okay, so it's really important. That should be in there now. From the 1st July 2019, where practical, you must have insulation in the ceiling and under floor. Now there are set demands of what degree of insulation you have. It's not just, yes, I've got bats in the ceiling, that won't cut the mustard. So you need to look up those, and we can give you those. I haven't got those here today. I'm not going to go through that now. And we can put you in touch with people who come and check and certify your insulation. IAG, which is New Zealand's leading insurance provider, has now decided, look, okay, investors, you've got these properties, we're insuring them for you, but you're not even thinking about us. You know, you're just going away. So now we expect certain things from you. So, Insurance Products Direct to under IAG, AMI, State, Lantern, NAC. Through insurance brokers, they come under the names of NZI, Lumley, authorised reps, ASB, BNZ, Westpac, SBS, Cooperative Bank. So if you're using any of those, they all come under this New Zealand's leading insurance provider. Okay, the meth problem, we know it's out there, let's not forget it. Okay, but it's not a biggie, it's very rare, but it is out there. So a meth test now, the insurance companies, and this is what the insurance companies are saying, a meth test to be performed before a tenant moves in. And keep an eye out for telltale signs of meth use, and again we've got details that we can supply to you, or the police can supply you, how to look for the telltale signs. And a meth test to be performed at the end of the tenancy. So why we're doing it at the start is because if you go along and it becomes positive, if we have to go to the Tenancy Tribunal on your behalf, or you have to go, you have to prove that when those tenants went in, it was fine, and now it isn't. And if you can't show it at the start, you've got no chance with the tribunal. And remember, it stays in the property for years. Okay, sounds simple, but it's not. References from previous tenancies, the home to be inspected every 3 months. Written inspections are now going to be required, and photographic or video records are recommended. If you're doing your own, are you going to do all this? Hope so. Upon awareness of illegal activities, application of the Tenancy Tribunal for termination of tenancy immediately. We do all this now. Yeah, we're charging 9.5% or whatever, but we're worth it. I mean, you actually work out how many, we worked out today how many hours, didn't we, that we spend doing it. What was it, David?
Upwards of 30 hours per annum.
Yeah.
And when you work out the
Per
cost per hour, it's very affordable.
Yeah, so we're full on with this, but we have to know what we're doing. Okay, so a conclusion. Insurance companies are concerned about insurance claims. Okay, they don't want to spend out on insurance claims, but they certainly want you to look after their best interests as well as your own. They expect you as a property owner to look after your insurance. I just said that. They recommend professional property management. I mean, that's what the insurance companies are now wanting. If an insurance assessor comes into my office regarding your claim, first of all he sits down and says, can I see your last 3 inspection reports? So I get them to him. He doesn't read them. He says, that's fine, I just want to know that you've done them.
Just move that slide on there, Bob.
Sorry?
Let's move the slide on.
Is it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And remember to read the small print on insurance. It's getting even more important now. There's a lot of, you can't afford to fall foul from that. Okay, we appreciate you've taken the time to attend our seminars tonight. I look a bit stupid here, standing up on my own without, if you lot hadn't turned up, so really thank you for that. Now, we have 6 professional property managers in our company, ready to assist you. We got Billy, we got Adrian, Dina, Josh, Philip and myself. Greg and I are happy to offer you a rental appraisal anytime you want, okay? I don't care who you're with at the moment or whether you're doing it yourself. We are happy to give you a rental appraisal, and we're happy to say to you, look, we reckon that we can probably get you enough where it covers our fees so you're no worse off, even though we're tax deductible. Okay, I welcome any questions that you've got. Thank you.
Just one question about insurance. Do you actually have to have, sorry, not insurance, insulation?
Mm-hmm.
Does it actually need to be certified?
Well, how else
growing industry around that?
Do you want me to answer that, Bob? Or
Well, if you want to.
At the moment, it hasn't been tested in court as to how much detail we have to go into with your details of what insulation is currently in the property. There's general recommendations, and it's quite complicated, so you can get reports done quite cheaply. With regards, if you're a little bit cynical like I am sometimes, you might want to get in sooner rather than later to upgrade insulation, because if there's a deadline that we're heading towards in July of 2019, if you were cynical like me, you might think that the prices may go up close to that time. So in terms of the guidelines and the regulations, yes, there are documents which we can provide if you'd like. You probably have to email Bob and myself. They're not in the material, but they're also available on the Ministry of Building, Innovation and Employment, which tells you exactly. But if you're using a reputable installer, they will know the guidelines. And what is heartening, I feel, is that if you have a home that already had bats, but it's an older home, those will shrink over time. So sometimes they just need what's called a top-up. So it's not necessarily as big a job as you might think, and there can be discounts or quite good offers that are out there as well. Like anything, just get a few quotes, but there's definite guidelines in mind.
I remember.